Lust isn't just about physical desire. It's a force that subtly shapes our hearts, minds, and decisions, often leading us down paths we never intended to walk. What if I told you that lust takes on 6 different forms, and each one might be creeping into your life right now without you even realizing it? The kind of lust we're talking about isn't limited to sexual temptation. It extends far deeper, affecting your ambitions, relationships, and even your happiness. Imagine this. You've got that one thing you crave, that one desire you can't seem to shake, the thing you believe will bring you fulfillment. But what if that very craving is slowly pulling you away from what truly matters? What if, like Eve in the Garden of Eden, your desires are leading you to chase something outside of God's will, something that can never fully satisfy you? There's the lust for pleasure, the kind that promises happiness but only leaves emptiness. There's the lust for power, where control and dominance over others become the ultimate goal. Then the lust for wealth, which tricks you into believing that more money equals more security. And it doesn't stop there. Recognition, knowledge, and even physical desires can all manifest as forms of lust that distort our true purpose. In this video, we'll dive into each of these 6 types of lust, helping you recognize them before they take control of your life. Whether you realize it or not, one of these types might already have a hold on you. Are you ready to uncover which one it is? Stick around to discover the path to freedom. 1. The lust for pleasure. The lust for pleasure is one of the most common and dangerous forms of lust. It goes beyond simply enjoying life's pleasures and escalates into an obsession with constant gratification. At its core, it is the pursuit of pleasure without limits or concern for the consequence. While enjoying life's pleasures, such as a good meal, a day out with friends, or a favorite hobby, isn't inherently bad, the lust for pleasure takes it much further. It turns pleasure into an addiction, constantly chasing after the next thrill, often at the cost of personal health, relationships, and ultimately spiritual well-being. People who fall prey to the lust for pleasure often seek temporary satisfaction through external sources, whether it's excessive partying, binge-watching shows, shopping sprees, or indulging in unhealthy habits like overeating. The goal is to avoid discomfort at all costs. The idea is that happiness lies in the pursuit of the next pleasurable experience, but this pursuit can become a cycle that leads to dissatisfaction and emptiness. The Bible speaks about this lust for pleasure, specifically warning against living a life focused solely on indulgence. Proverbs 21:17 offers a stark reminder: those who love pleasure become poor. Those who love wine and luxury will never be rich. This verse doesn't just talk about financial wealth, but also warns against spiritual poverty. The more someone chases after pleasure, the more they risk losing sight of the things that truly matter: faith, integrity, and purpose. The danger of the lust for pleasure is that it distorts one's priorities. When pleasure becomes the main goal, everything else takes a backseat. Relationships suffer because personal gratification often comes first. People might hurt others in the pursuit of their own pleasures, from neglecting their responsibilities to damaging their health. When the pursuit of pleasure becomes an obsession, it blinds individuals to the long-term consequences of their actions. Another aspect of the lust for pleasure is its ability to make individuals feel like they are never enough. It's a relentless craving that no matter how much you consume, will never be satisfied. The temporary pleasure experienced from indulging in these desires quickly fades, leaving behind a deeper emptiness. People might feel they need to find something bigger, better, or more exciting to fill the void. The struggle against the lust for pleasure isn't about denying yourself all forms of enjoyment, but about practicing moderation and discerning when enough is enough. God calls us to live a life of balance, where pleasure doesn't rule us but serves as a healthy part of our lives. Ecclesiastes 3:13 reminds us that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. Pleasures, when enjoyed in moderation and with a grateful heart, are a gift from God, but when they become a god in themselves, they can take us away from the life God intends for us. To overcome the lust for pleasure, one must shift focus from immediate gratification to deeper fulfillment. True joy and peace come not from temporary pleasure, but from a life aligned with God's will. By surrendering our desires to God and seeking satisfaction in Him, we can break free from the cycle of chasing fleeting pleasure. Recognizing that pleasure itself isn't evil, but when it controls us, it becomes a destructive force, is the key to living a balanced and fulfilling life. Only by finding our satisfaction in God can we experience the lasting peace and joy that pleasure can never provide. The lust for power. The lust for power is one of the most insidious and deceptive forms of desire. It's the craving for control, influence, and domination over others, often hiding behind seemingly innocent ambitions or competitiveness. While the pursuit of success and leadership isn't inherently wrong, when the desire for power becomes all-consuming, It distorts our motivations and actions, leading us to prioritize control over compassion and dominance over service. At its core, the lust for power is driven by a deep-seated need to feel superior or in command. It manifests in various ways, from overt manipulation and dominance in relationships to subtler forms of control, like needing to always be right or forcing others to conform to one's way of thinking. People caught in the grip of this lust often seek positions where they can exercise authority, not for the sake of serving others, but to feed their ego and control their environment. The Bible addresses this issue directly, especially in Mark 10:43-44, where Jesus teaches his disciples that true leadership isn't about power or control, but about serving others. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, he says, flipping the common understanding of power on its head. Jesus shows that greatness comes not through dominating others, but through humility, sacrifice, and service. The lust for power leads us to seek glory and status at any cost. But in doing so, we often miss the very essence of what it means to lead, helping and uplifting others. The consequences of a life driven by the lust for power can be far-reaching. Relationships suffer, as power-hungry individuals may manipulate, dominate, or isolate others in their pursuit of control. They may use others as stepping stones, disregarding the well-being and dignity of those around them in favor of achieving their own goal. This type of behavior often leads to loneliness as people become wary of those who only seek power and control. Moreover, the lust for power can corrupt one's sense of morality. In the quest to maintain power, individuals might compromise their integrity, make unethical decisions, or even betray others to secure their position. The pursuit of control can make one blind to the needs of others and create an environment where manipulation, deceit, and cruelty thrive. In modern society, the lust for power can also be amplified by the structure of institutions and organizations. Whether in politics, business, or even social circles, individuals who crave power may do whatever it takes to climb to the top, often resorting to cutthroat tactics to outmaneuver competitors. The allure of power becomes intoxicating, and before long it consumes the person, making them less concerned about the people they step on and more focused on the title or position they desire. However, the antidote to the lust for power is humility, the ability to acknowledge that true leadership and influence come from a place of love, service, and sacrifice. Real power isn't about ruling over others, but about empowering others, helping them grow, and lifting them up. It's about recognizing that the strongest leaders are those who put the needs of others first, who inspire through example, and who lead with grace, not force. In conclusion, the lust for power is a dangerous and destructive force that can distort our sense of purpose and drive us away from God's plan for us. It can lead to broken relationships, moral corruption, and a loss of true fulfillment. True greatness comes from humility, from serving others rather than controlling them. By recognizing and rejecting the lust for power, we can seek a higher form of leadership, one rooted in love, selflessness, and respect for the dignity of every person. 3. The lust for wealth. The lust for wealth is one of the most subtle and powerful forms of lust that can take root in a person's heart. It's an intense, overwhelming desire for money and material possessions that blinds individuals to what truly matters. While having financial stability isn't inherently wrong, the obsession with wealth can lead to destruction, as it often distorts priorities, damages relationships, and leaves people empty despite their material success. In today's world, the lust for wealth is more prevalent than ever. It is fueled by societal pressures, media portrayals, and the constant drive for success that equates financial prosperity with happiness and fulfillment. From the young aspiring entrepreneur to the seasoned executive, many people chase wealth with an unrelenting passion, believing it is the key to security and happiness. However, the Bible provides a clear warning. For the love of money is the root of all evil. 1 Timothy 6. This doesn't mean money itself is evil, but the love of it, when it becomes the center of your life, leads to corruption. One of the dangers of the lust for wealth is how it leads individuals to compromise their values and integrity. People who are consumed by the desire for money may be tempted to cut corners, lie, manipulate, or even exploit others in order to amass more wealth. The pursuit of financial gain can overshadow ethical considerations, making it easy to justify dishonesty or immoral behavior. The promise of financial freedom and success becomes so alluring that everything else, family, friendships, and faith, takes a back seat. Another problem with the lust for wealth is how it can cause a cycle of dissatisfaction. No matter how much money someone earns, it's rarely enough. Once one goal is achieved, the next one is set higher and the cycle continues. This insatiable craving for more wealth never satisfies the deeper hunger within. People often think that if they just had a bit more money, their life would be perfect. Less stress, more security, more happiness. But in reality, wealth does not guarantee peace or joy. It can provide comfort, but it cannot fulfill the soul's deepest needs. The lust for wealth also has the power to disrupt relationships. When money becomes the central focus of a person's life, they often become less concerned with the emotional and spiritual needs of their loved ones. The drive to accumulate wealth can consume a person's time and energy, leaving little for family or friends. In some cases, the pursuit of wealth can even lead to conflicts and division within families, as members fight over inheritance, assets, or control over financial matters. So how can one combat the lust for wealth? The key lies in shifting the focus from material gain to spiritual fulfillment. The Bible encourages believers to store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, Matthew 6:20, reminding us that true riches come from a relationship with God, not from accumulating earthly wealth. By adopting an attitude of contentment and trusting in God's provision, individuals can resist the pull of wealth as a false idol. Another important step is recognizing that money is a tool, not the ultimate goal. It can be used to bless others, support charitable causes, and build a legacy that lasts beyond material possessions. When wealth is viewed as a resource for good, rather than an end in itself, it no longer holds the power to enslave the heart. In conclusion, the lust for wealth is a dangerous and deceptive force that can easily take control of our hearts if we aren't vigilant. It's important to recognize when the desire for money is becoming unhealthy and refocus on what truly matters: faith, family, and fulfilling our purpose in life. By doing so, we can avoid the pitfalls of this lust and find peace in the true riches that come from God. 4. The lust for recognition. The lust for recognition is a powerful and often dangerous desire that many people struggle with, whether they realize it or not. In today's world, where social media platforms dominate and validation is measured by likes, shares, and comments, this form of lust has only grown stronger. It manifests as an intense craving for attention, approval, and praise from others, often at the expense of one's own values, relationships, and self-worth. At its core, the lust for recognition is about wanting to be seen and admired, seeking external validation to feel significant. It goes beyond simply enjoying the occasional compliment or acknowledgement. It becomes an all-consuming desire for constant recognition and affirmation. This lust is not always about seeking fame or fortune. It can be seen in everyday life through actions driven by the need for approval, whether in the workplace, friendships, or even within families. The problem arises when this desire for recognition becomes the central focus of our lives. When we start to measure our worth based on how others perceive us, we lose sight of what truly matters. This type of lust blinds us to the importance of internal validation, which comes from our own sense of purpose, values, and the approval of God, rather than the fleeting praise of others. Jesus in John 12:43 exposed the struggle with seeking human approval over divine approval, saying, "For they loved human praise more than the praise of God." This verse highlights the dangerous impact that prioritizing human recognition over God's approval can have. The craving for validation from others can overshadow our true calling, leading us to compromise our principles, act out of insecurity, and make decisions that align with what others expect, rather than what aligns with our authentic self. In many cases, the lust for recognition feeds into pride and vanity. We become consumed with how others see us, trying to project an image of perfection, success, or superiority. This can lead to unhealthy competition, envy, and an inability to accept criticism or imperfection. People trapped in this cycle may constantly seek validation through their achievements, appearance, or material possessions, believing that these external factors will secure their worth in the eyes of others. Social media has amplified the lust for recognition in ways that were unimaginable before. With platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, people often base their self-esteem on the number of likes, comments, and followers they have. This external feedback loop creates a false sense of value, one that is constantly fluctuating and dependent on the ever-changing opinions of others. The result? A fragile self-worth that can easily be shattered by a lack of attention or a negative comment. The danger in constantly seeking recognition is that it pulls us away from what truly matters: our purpose, our relationships, and our relationship with God. When we live for the approval of others, we may find ourselves in a constant state of anxiety and discontentment, always chasing the next fix of recognition to feel good about ourselves. This pursuit is exhausting and ultimately unfulfilling. The antidote to the lust for recognition is to focus on internal validation, grounded in who we are and what we value. Instead of seeking constant approval from others, we must turn our attention to God's affirmation, which is unchanging and unconditional. Understanding that our worth does not depend on others' opinions, but on our identity in Christ, can bring peace and freedom from this insatiable desire for recognition. To overcome this lust, we need to embrace humility, the willingness to serve others without expecting anything in return. True greatness, as taught by Jesus, is found in humility and in serving others, not in seeking fame or admiration. When we shift our focus from external validation to internal fulfillment, we find the freedom to live authentically and contentedly, knowing that our value comes from a source that is eternal and unshakable. The lust for knowledge is a powerful yet subtle form of desire that can easily be mistaken for a noble pursuit. It's the drive to learn, to understand, and to gain wisdom. However, when this thirst for knowledge becomes a consuming obsession, it can morph into a type of lust that distorts our intentions and distracts us from true understanding. While gaining knowledge in itself isn't wrong, the problem arises when it becomes about personal pride, superiority, or relying solely on human wisdom rather than seeking divine truth. The allure of knowledge. In today's world, knowledge is more accessible than ever. With the internet, books, and countless educational resources, we can gain insights into virtually any topic. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that knowledge alone can provide the answers to life's deepest questions. The lust for knowledge often begins innocently enough: curiosity, a desire for self-improvement, or the pursuit of academic success. Yet, when this pursuit shifts from seeking wisdom to accumulating information for the sake of feeling superior, it becomes a form of lust. This type of lust can manifest in many ways. Some individuals seek knowledge to bolster their egos, using what they know to assert dominance in conversations or situations. They accumulate facts not for growth, but to win arguments, impress others, or gain influence. Others might hoard knowledge as a form of control, believing that having all the answers gives them power over others. This pursuit of knowledge, fueled by selfish motivations, ultimately distances individuals from true understanding. The biblical perspective on knowledge. The Bible provides a clear warning against this type of lust. In 1 Corinthians 8:1, the Apostle Paul writes, "Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up." This passage highlights the danger of knowledge when it becomes an end in itself, rather than a tool for growth and service. Knowledge, when used without love, can lead to arrogance, isolation, and a false sense of superiority. Those who focus solely on accumulating information often fail to recognize that true wisdom comes from God, not human intellect. The Bible also warns against seeking knowledge apart from God. In Proverbs 2:6 it says, "For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding." True knowledge is not about mastering facts or memorizing data. It is about understanding God's will and applying it to our lives. When we focus on knowledge apart from God's truth, we risk falling into the trap of self-reliance and pride. The difference between knowledge and wisdom. It's crucial to distinguish between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is the accumulation of facts and information. Wisdom, on the other hand, is the ability to apply that knowledge in a way that honors God and benefits others. Many people seek knowledge for personal gain, but wisdom seeks to glorify God and serve others. While knowledge is finite, wisdom is rooted in a relationship with God, which is infinite. It's important to remember that wisdom, as outlined in the Bible, comes from a heart that is aligned with God's will, not simply from what we know. How to overcome the lust for knowledge. Overcoming the lust for knowledge requires a shift in focus. Instead of seeking knowledge to elevate ourselves, we must aim to seek wisdom that humbles us. It's essential to remember that true wisdom comes from God and is always accompanied by love and humility. Rather than relying on human wisdom, we should seek God's guidance through prayer, scripture, and the Holy Spirit. One way to counteract the lust for knowledge is to ask ourselves why we seek to learn. Are we trying to build our own empire of information, or are we genuinely seeking to grow closer to God and understand His will for our lives? A humble, prayerful approach to learning keeps our desires in check and aligns our hearts with God's purpose. The lust for knowledge can easily become a trap if we allow it to consume us. It's not the acquisition of knowledge itself that's dangerous, but rather the motives behind it. When knowledge is pursued for personal pride, control, or self-promotion, it loses its true value. True wisdom, however, comes from God and is marked by humility, love, and a desire to serve others. By recognizing the difference between knowledge and wisdom, and by seeking God's guidance in our learning, we can avoid the trap of the lust for knowledge and instead use our understanding to glorify Him. The lust for physical desires is one of the most widely recognized and discussed forms of lust, often associated with sexual temptation and craving for physical pleasure. However, it encompasses more than just the sexual aspect. It extends to any form of craving or indulgence in physical gratification that distorts one's true purpose and relationship with God. At its core, the lust for physical desires is an overwhelming urge to seek satisfaction in the physical world, often disregarding the spiritual or moral implications of those desires. This form of lust can manifest in many ways, through excessive indulgence in food, sexual temptations, or the pursuit of comfort and material pleasure. While there's nothing inherently wrong with physical enjoyment, when these desires become obsessive and take precedence over spiritual growth and healthy relationships, they begin to lead us down a dangerous path. The Bible offers significant warnings about the dangers of letting physical lust control us. One of the key verses addressing this is found in 1 Thessalonians 4:3-5, where it says, "God's will is for you to be holy, so stay away from all sexual sin. Then each of you will control his own body and live in holiness and honor, not in lustful passion, like the pagans who do not know God." This passage is clear. God's will is for us to live in holiness, and giving in to lustful desires distances us from that goal. Sexual temptation is often the first thing people think of when considering the lust for physical desires, but it extends to much more than just sexual activity. It can include the temptation to indulge excessively in food, alcohol, drugs, or even the constant search for comfort and material possessions. These physical cravings promise temporary satisfaction, but they leave us feeling empty and disillusioned once the moment passes. One of the most dangerous aspects of the lust for physical desires is the way it distorts our priorities. When we allow our physical cravings to dictate our actions and choices, we often sacrifice important aspects of our lives, such as relationships, health, and spiritual growth. People may become addicted to food, substances, or even the rush of physical pleasure, losing sight of what truly brings lasting joy and fulfillment. Another significant issue with the lust for physical desires is how it affects our emotional and spiritual well-being. Overindulgence can create a cycle of guilt, shame, and dissatisfaction. Whether it's pursuing a fleeting sexual encounter, indulging in excessive consumption of food or drink, or focusing solely on material wealth, these pursuits often leave us feeling more disconnected from God and others than before. The more we feed these desires, the more they grow, making it harder to break free from their grip. The key to overcoming the lust for physical desires lies in recognizing the temporary nature of these pleasures. In Matthew 5:28, Jesus warns against even looking at someone with lustful intent, highlighting how easily our thoughts and actions can be corrupted by physical cravings. Instead, we are called to focus on things that truly fulfill us: love, peace, patience, kindness, and self-control. The Bible offers practical guidance for overcoming the lust for physical desires. James 4:7 says, "Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you." Humbling ourselves before God and recognizing that true fulfillment comes from Him is the first step. Practicing self-control, setting healthy boundaries, and seeking spiritual nourishment through prayer, scripture, and fellowship can help us resist the pull of physical desire. In conclusion, while physical desires are a natural part of being human, the lust for physical gratification becomes problematic when it takes control of our lives. It can lead to a cycle of addiction, guilt, and disillusionment that pulls us further away from our true purpose. By seeking God's guidance, practicing self-control, and focusing on spiritual growth, we can overcome the lust for physical desires and live in alignment with God's will for our lives. In conclusion, lust takes many forms, each with the potential to pull us away from our true purpose and the life God intends for us. The 6 types of lust: pleasure, power, wealth, recognition, knowledge, and physical desires are all temptations that can take control of our hearts and minds if we aren't careful. While these desires in and of themselves may not be inherently wrong, it's when they dominate our thoughts, choices, and actions that they become dangerous. The lust for physical desires, in particular, can be one of the most powerful and deceptive forces, offering temporary satisfaction while ultimately leaving us feeling empty. Whether it's sexual temptation, excessive indulgence, or the pursuit of comfort and pleasure, these cravings can lead to destruction if we allow them to control us. But the good news is that we don't have to remain trapped in these cycles. By recognizing the ways lust influences our lives, we can take the first step toward freedom. Surrendering our desires to God
seeking His guidance, and practicing self-control allow us to live a life of purpose, peace, and fulfillment. Let's commit to resisting these temptations, knowing that true satisfaction comes from God alone.